What's up, gamers? This is another Godforge video, and today we have some exclusive information that Fateless is allowing us to release to you, and it's specific to kit changes. Now, there are three legendary heroes we're going to go over. We're going to go over Loki, we're going to go over Dracula, and we're going to go over Ra. I'm going to show you exactly what changed in their kit, maybe go over some detail of my first take opinions on it, and then I'll show you the animations in the background. Now, this isn't the first time we've got some exclusive information. You can see in this video, we were able to show you all Sun Wukong and his abilities and all the information about him. We also got to reveal to you one of the dungeon bosses, which you can see in this video here. But without further ado, let's get into those kit changes. All right, we're going to start with Ra first because his is probably the most straightforward. The TLDR is that it's a straight buff. Just about everything is better in Ra's kit, so we'll go over it right now. But the basic didn't change from the alpha, or didn't change from previous. So that is to attack one enemy with a 75% chance to increase the duration of Blaze by 1 turn. If the attack is critical, activate Blaze on the target. The same multipliers of 300% attack and 200% accuracy. Now his core did change. It is attack all enemies with a 75% chance to place Blaze 2 for 3 turns. If this ability defeats an enemy, decreases the cooldown by 1 turn. So that's a big difference. You can actually reduce the cooldown by defeating an enemy. And then there's a increase to crit damage by 5% for each blaze placed, stacking up to 15%. For the ultimate, it now attacks all enemies 3 times. Each hit has a 35% chance to place defense down 2 and vulnerable down 2. So those are 2 new debuffs added to his kit on each target for 2 turns. And then again, if an enemy is defeated, increase the duration of Blaze on all enemies by 1 turn. And then his passive, when any Blaze on allies or enemies activates, expires, or is removed, increase the damage of the next ultimate by 5%. Also has a 50% chance to activate Blaze on any attack. So yeah, they took the healing aspect away from the passive, but in general, it's all I think a buff. It's just Blaze, and more Blaze, do more damage, reduce the cooldown, and added some more debuffs. So overall, solid improvement for Ra. Now the other thing I wanted to highlight about these kit changes are the ascensions and the awakenings. So you can see for Ra his ascensions, and I think this is pretty standard when it comes to attack, HP and defense increase of 9% for the first 3 awakenings, along with your passive unlocking at 1 and your weapon unlocking at 2. Now I think 4 through 6 is where it changes per hero. So Ra is an accuracy bump at 4, crit damage at 5, and increased divinity at 6. And as far as his awakenings go, so at awakening 1 is this ability here. Increases crit damage by 3% for each blaze placed. Awakening 2 is the archetype stat boost. So I highlighted in my last video how some of the awakenings are different at 2 and 4. So this is one of the new ones, and it's specific to Slayer for him. So here's what you're going to get at Awakening 2. Awakening 3 is another ability increase. If an enemy is defeated, increase the duration of Blaze on all enemies for 1 turn. 4 is specific to gear stat boost. So right now it's talking about armor attunement, armor primary stat multiplier, and weapon stat multiplier. And for 5, it's also has a 50% chance to activate Blaze on any attack. So those are his ascensions and awakenings. All right, now let's move to Loki. So much like Ra, his basic did not change. It remains attack 1 enemy with a 75% chance to place charm on the target for 1 turn. That's with a 110% attack and 250% accuracy multiplier. Now when we get into his core, that's where there definitely are some changes. So now it is place sleep on all enemies for 1 turn. It was taunt in the previous. If the target is already under sleep, increase its duration by 1 turn and steal 10% of the target's turn meter. If the target resists sleep, blocks, or is immune, increase this hero's turn meter by 20%. So again, kind of replacing taunt with sleep. Now the 5 turn cooldown for a 1 turn sleep seems a little steep, but I'm thinking if you're in PvP, you might only need that 1 turn of sleep, and might not even get back to your core anyway. Now, moving into the ultimate, attacks all enemies with an 80% chance to place Corrupt on each target for 2 turns, then places Vanish and Reflect on this hero for 2 turns. When attacking under Vanish, steal a random buff or extend a random debuff by 1 turn. So they kind of took this mechanic from what was the alt into what is the core now. So this is different overall, it seems. And then when we get to the passive, when sleep expires or is removed from an enemy, decrease their turn meter by 20% and place speed down 2 on the target for 1 turn. So overall, I think the kit seems better. I think it'll definitely be good for PvP, but really until we get our hands on it and we can test it out, I'm not sure how much of an improvement it made, but it seems like overall it's definitely better. All right, getting into Loki's Ascension and Awakenings. You can see his Ascension here. Again, I think it's the standard 3 for 1 through 3, but 4 for him is an accuracy boost, 5 is a speed boost, and then 6 is initial divinity. And then when you get into his Awakenings, I will list them all out here, but ability score 1 is if the target resists sleep, blocks, or immune, increases this hero's turn meter by 20%. 2 is the Disruptor archetype stat boost. 3 is also places speed down 2 on the target for 1 turn. 4 is that gear stat boost. And 5 is when attacking under Vanish, steal a random buff or extend a random debuff by 1 turn. So it looks like for the Awakenings, when we're looking at the kit, that's fully awakened Loki, based on kind of what I'm reading here. All right, now let's move on to Dracula. So his basic is to attack 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 75% chance to place 1 stack of bleed on each enemy. Heal 5% HP this hero if the target is under bleed. So the target, instead of, in the wording in the other one is to do damage to the enemy, but this one is just to whoever you target, you get that healing. So a little bit different. But moving on to the core, he places 2 stacks of bleed on all enemies and remove 1 buff from each target. If a buff was removed, place 3 stacks of bleed instead. So it sounds like if they have buffs and you remove it, they get 3 stacks of bleed. If they have no buffs, it's 2 stacks of bleed. And then it grants him an extra turn, so he gets to go again right away. So overall, different mechanic than previously, but I think it's overall pretty cool. And then when you get into the ultimate, attacks all enemies at 4% HP and 50% attack. That actually is a boost from 3% HP before, 4 times. Before attacking, consumes all stacks of bleed on each target and increases the damage inflicted by 8% per stack of bleed consumed. Now that's double. At 8%, it was at 4%. But again, you're not placing them on your allies, you're only placing them on the enemies. And then also each hit destroys the target's HP by 10% of the damage inflicted, up to 60% of the target's max HP. So I think overall, it seems like it's better and more fit for the archetype of brawler, because it's more of like the solo. I put the debuffs on the enemy. You're not boosting you're not putting any buffs on your team anymore, but you're also not putting any debuffs on your team either. So there's no cleanse mechanic, but it's more the brawler type archetype of doing the damage. And if we're doing 8% instead of 4% per stack, I think that he's going to hit pretty darn hard. But again, it's going to be one of those things where we need to play it in game and test it out before we know exactly how much better it is. And I can't forget about his passive. At the start of an enemy's turn, if they are under bleed, increase the damage of this hero's next attack by 10%. And at the start of an ally's turn, steals 5% of their current HP and increases this hero's divinity by 2%. I'm interested to see exactly how that works and how that will impact the battle. And then when we look at Dracula's Ascension and Awakening, you can see that again, the first 3 are the same. For him, it's accuracy plus 14 at 4, initiative plus 8 at 5, and initial divinity plus 200 at 6. And then for his Awakenings, at 1, it is place 1 stack of bleed on all enemies instead. At 2, it's the Brawler archetype stat boost. At 3, each hit destroys the target's HP at 10%, up to 60%. So that looks like that gets added on at 3. 4 is the gear stat boost, and then 5 is at the start of an ally's turn, steal 5% of their current HP and increases this hero's divinity by 2%. So that gets added on at Awakening 5. All right, that is breaking down all the changes to the kits of those 3 heroes. I really want to know what you think. Do you think that those are improvements across the board? I think it is for Ra for sure, but I'm curious to see if you think Dracula and Loki have also improved. Again, hopefully you found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Brad with BradBodGaming. I'll talk to you later.